Hello. There are three types of sequences in Python. One is list, and other one is tuple, and the third one is string. List is basically used to store the sequence of arbitrary objects, whereas tuple is an immutable version of a list. A string, it's basically a sequence of immutable text characters. So in this video, we are going to discuss about a tuple sequence. If you don't know the details of the list, there is another video for a list. You can watch it and you can understand. Now, tuple is basically defined as a class in Python. So like a list, tuple is also having the constructors, and tuple is basically represented by using two parentheses. And now uh, tuple is basically an immutable version of list. So immutable means the value cannot be changed. If you have a clear understanding about a list where we can see we have certain elements inside a list, and the elements are separated by comma. And now if you consider the tuple, and it's basically a list, but it is going to be represented by using the parenthesis. But one thing, more important thing is once the tuple is loaded, it cannot be changed. That's why it's called as an immutable version of list. Okay. Now, if the tuple is going to have only one value, and that need to be ended with comma, even if it's one value, it should has to be ended with comma for a tuple. Now, let us look into one small illustration of the use of tuple class. Now, tuple is basically having a default constructor since it's a class. So, as a default constructor, when it is invoked, it returns an empty tuple. So, empty tuple is basically represented with empty parenthesis. So, that's an empty tuple. And also, like a list, it can have a default and a parameterized constructor where we can pass some information as an argument into it. So for a given information, for a given argument, it will return a tuple, and the tuple can be stored into some medium. So here we have a z as a tuple variable. So for a given term or a string piece, a tuple is going to be created. A tuple is nothing but for a given string, it's going to consist of individual characters separated by commas. Like a list only, it's going to be there. Only the difference is it's going to have a square, this one, parenthesis. So we have p, we have given a input as p's. Now here we can see that the characters are separated by commas, p, e, a, c, e. And also we would be able to assign a values to the tuple, like I have given x is equal to pe, dsap, iba, and vlsi. So after assigning, if you want to see it, you can also be able to see it just by printing it. So pe, dsap, iba, vlsi is going to be stored onto this x tuple, and that when you print it, you'll get the same thing. Then like a list, we can also set a reference for a tuple. So x is basically a tuple, and now we are setting y as a reference. So now y tuple also will have the same content. So pe, dsap, iba, and vlsa. So it having same contents as x. Now also there are some methods are there. So we'll discuss one method called count. So count is basically used on a tuple to check for the given value how many times it appears in a tuple. So let's say a p is one search character. So we are trying to search for p on a tuple. So if the p is there, it will return how many times it is there. So now if you look into it, PE, it is there for one time. So it will return value 1 as an integer. And also we can find an index of a particular value. So we can find an index of a particular value by using an index method. And since we have both reference for both x and y, so whatever the operation I do on x and y also will get affected. So here y on a y, if I use the index method, and now I can search, I can looking for a particular string I bar. And do we have an I bar is here? Yes. In the list in X we have, in a tuple we have I bar. So where is it actually? No, it is stored in an tuple that can be returned with the help of this index method. So the P will have the index 0, DSAP will have an index 1, and IBA will have an index 2, and VLS will have an index 3. So IBA is the one that we are looking for. So it's going to return uh, value 2, that is index value 2. Okay, so that's about the tuple. So one thing that we need to understand here is a tuple is an immutable version of a list. So once the value is assigned, we cannot change it. Okay, thank you.